Right, morning everybody, for the delay. For clarity then, in the absence of enough leaders in the room or someone on the telly, what we'll do is we will treat this as an informal meeting of the EPC in the sense that we can't formally vote and decide things. I don't think that matters in the context of the items on the agenda today. The key thing, the reason to pull this together is obviously we committed to ensuring that we have a lot of these conversations, devolution conversations in the public forum, and been able to do that since July for a variety of reasons. So I think it's important that we do have a public discussion today, and actually the items on the agenda don't necessarily require that formal voting element anyway. So hopefully it just a chance for us to kind of rehearse the conversation in an accountable and public way. So welcome to colleagues. We've got Andy and Andy as well, Andy Abraham on the screen. So without further ado, minutes of the last meeting, I assume colleagues have pored over them with great intensity. Any dramas to relay to me? No? All good. Apologies. No, we've got a list.
Yes, Chair, we've got a list. Apologies from Councillors David Mellon and his substitute, who also had to pull out at the last minute, Negat Khan. Simon Robinson, Councillor Milan Radulovic, Councillors Zadrozny and Relf, Mel Barrett, Wayne Baxton, and we'll add David Lloyd to the list as well. Thank you.
Declarations of interest. No, very good. All right then, so we'll move on immediately to devolution net zero opportunities presentation. Is that yourself, Kath?
Yes, it is. I'm covering for Wayne. Thank you. I think okay, thanks very much, Noel. So some of this will be familiar to you from previous presentations, and I know the slides were shared in the pack as well. But just as a recap, you all know that obviously the agreement was taken earlier this year, and that there's been work carrying on over summer and the following months to put together some of the detail of the net zero theme. The Midlands Net Zero Hub is hosted by Nottingham City Council, and at a previous meeting we had a presentation from Michael Gallagher from the Midlands Net Zero Hub, and he is doing a lot of work with us on this theme. I chair a Nottinghamshire-wide environment group which meets about every 6 weeks, and all the districts, the county, city are represented at that group alongside the LEP and the universities. And we have been supporting Michael and Wayne from the city in trying to get some of the detail together for this theme of work. So included in the ask for the Environment Net Zero theme, again, you'll be familiar with these items, and I'm going to go through them in a bit more detail in the following slides. But we've got the local area energy plan, work on the low carbon economy, the opportunity for devolved retrofit funding, which is key, because at the moment we have to keep bidding into that. We want to do some work on flood alleviation strategy, which I know in particular Mayor Andy from Mansfield was very keen to see that in the ask. And we got the opportunity to do some work together as a pilot in advance of the Environment Act changes coming into being. There's also some exciting work that we can do on the nature recovery strand of work. And also Wayne in particular has been investigating heat network zoning and the opportunity to work with the UK Investment Bank to see how we can get additional funding into this theme of work. So the local area energy plan is work that we are in the process of commissioning at the moment. I know that members have got really strong interest in this. So as a recap, this is to enable us to really understand what the energy requirements are for our area and what the natural resources are that we can use and what the infrastructure is that's already in place, so that we can put a long-term plan together for achieving net zero. And it also involves working with the private sector and suppliers, partners such as Western Power Distribution, and other such organisations, to ensure that we know what we need in the future. We've got the right capacity in the right place. And that's why the local area energy plan has to be done individually for each geographic area. It's not something that you can take off a shelf. It's a bit like doing a local plan as far as, you know, housing and employment requirements go. It's a detailed piece of work. But what it will enable us to do is then have our plans and goals in place and be able to bid in for other future funding. So at the moment, the City Council is acting as our procurement partner for this, and their City Executive Board is meeting in February and signing off the papers so that we can get on with procuring the local area energy plan. There's a company that we've worked with so far, whether or not they actually end up doing the work, called Energy Systems Catapult, and they've done these pieces of work in particular, Bridgend and I think Salford. The whole of Wales are looking at doing this at the moment as well, so it is a big thing for us to do. The colours on that map are indicative. They're not necessarily what it will end up as, but we will end up doing various local area energy plans, not one per district area, but some of the areas will join together. And then we'll have a piece of work that covers the whole of D2N2. We did apply for some funding from the Research and Innovation Department. Unfortunately, we weren't successful on that. That was just to give us a little bit of funding to get going on the first round. But the real reason we applied for that is because the second round of that funding was going to be quite significant, and we wanted to be able to tap into that. So we will continue looking at other sources of funding to help us with this work, and we might be able to get some other funding through devolution. At the moment, we're looking at around £75,000 per district area to fund the local area energy plan. And I think that's largely been signed off by the different councils, but where councils haven't been able to do it yet, that's not a problem. We'll look at phasing the work so that we can do it in a way that works with different councils and their different funding challenges at the moment. But that's all positive news on that. The next slide just shows a little bit of what could be achieved. So some of the potential outcomes from having a local area energy plan in place. We've got there's a little time lag on moving the slides on. So it will come up in just a moment. But basically, the slides are in your pack, so you might be able to see them a different route. But there's a potential for 410,000 homes to be retrofitted in the D2N2 area, which would save £4.3 billion in energy costs between now and 2050. In addition, there's potential to have 1 million plug-in vehicles, electric vehicles in the region, and we'll be looking at up to 116,000 public, 163,000 workplace charge points. And the slides come up now. Thank you very much, Nell. You might have seen in the news today, there are some big disparities in availability of electric charge points in different council areas. So, you know, obviously we're looking to address that, but it's important to note that if you put a charge point in, as I know you're all aware, for every home, the grid couldn't cope with it anyway. So that is really why it's so important to link all of this work into Western Power Distribution and other DNOs to make sure that the capacity is in the right place for what we need. The potential for 63,000 homes with solar, that shows how much electricity that could produce. And I think, you know, we're looking at potentially a capital investment over the period to 2050 of £7.6 billion, so a huge amount of money. But if you go down the slide a bit, potential for more jobs to be created, but also all of that air quality improvements and all of those carbon savings. So that leads on to the next point around low carbon economy and what that is worth to the country. Again, you probably saw in the news this week quite topical stories about the US government giving freedoms and flexibilities to kickstart, or not kickstart, but to encourage the car industry and electric vehicles industry, and Europe are looking to see what can they do in response. And of course, we need to be looking as well in the UK to see where do we fit into all of this as well. So the low carbon and environmental goods and services sector was worth 5.3 billion in 2019-20, but obviously we're looking to see that growing all the time. And you can see at the bottom there the different parts of that sector, with renewable energy providing 40%, low carbon 38%, and environmental services 22% of that sector. So it is a big sector, and you know, in our region we've got our power stations that are, you know, are going to be decommissioned, and what do we do with those sites in the future? We've also got a lot of renewables. One thing that Derbyshire have done, they're slightly ahead of us on this, which we're looking to catch up with through the local area energy plan, is they have done a piece of work mapping their renewals across Derbyshire and Derby, and we will look to be doing that as well. So the next item to cover is the devolved retrofit funding, and you know, something that we're really pleased of, a real success when the deal was signed to get the agreement for £9 million of capital funding. We haven't got that money yet, but we are expecting it to come through this year, and that equates to around 500,000. Sorry, the slides have frozen again, so bear with us, but they are in the pack. But that equates to £500,000 per district area. So I know district colleagues are working on this agenda already, are delivering projects, and when that funding comes through, we'll just be able to deliver more of the same. Certainly from our perspective in Rushcliffe, we've done a lot of work in places like Eastleek, where we have the steel frame buildings that we've been able to retrofit, and residents are just delighted and can't believe that we're able to do this sort of thing. So it's really successful, and there's lots of areas that need that. So when that funding comes through, there's other areas that we will be looking at. We will also be particularly looking at park homes and potentially riverboat homes as well, as areas where they have challenges with insulation. There are some, so that will hopefully move us away from having to keep bidding in competitively for different rounds of funding. Moving on to the flood alleviation strategy, that is work that is ongoing. We're looking to work collaboratively with our partners, particularly Environment Agency, internal drainage boards, and I think, you know, many of us have had issues with flooding in our areas over the years. So this is obviously key to see if we can get things working more effectively. And what is important to note with that piece of work, it doesn't change the roles and responsibilities of lead local flood authorities. So that will continue. To move on to the nature recovery and blue and green infrastructure work. Now, what we need to do under the Environment Act is put together a local nature recovery strategy. And in our area, in the N2 area, this will be led by County Council. So County Council are going to work with City and all the districts. So County Council will take the lead for the city area as well as the county area in putting together the local nature recovery strategy. And they have received funding from DEFRA now, and are looking to put together a job description for a new officer to lead this piece of work. It will be a reasonably long-term piece of work, Oh, it's come up on the screen. Excellent. But you can see there that the point is, it is about nature recovery. So it's looking at what the existing habitats we've got already, how we can help some habitats survive, how we can create and improved habitats for the future. And it also links in very much with our new duties of biodiversity net gain that come through the Environment Act. So all the districts, county, city colleagues will be contacted, if not already, but very shortly, to be involved in this work. There's going to be a strategic oversight group, and actually I've been in touch with the chief execs recently to get names to put onto that group as director level reps. And then there will be a sort of officer group as well. But I think, you know, it'll be really interesting to follow the progress of that piece of work and support that. And I think, well, I know that members are really keen on the green and blue infrastructure across the region and making sure that is as enhanced as possible. The next item is the heat network zoning coordinator function. Now, this is not one that I'm personally really in the loop on, but I do know from Wayne that he met with BEIS last week. So it was working with government last week on this, and they have got some indicative plans being put together regarding heat network zoning. They are subject to a non-disclosure agreement, so I don't think even if he was here he'd be able to share them, but so far that's very positive. So I think that's something that perhaps we bring back to a future meeting to understand more about that. Yeah, as I said, it's not something that I'm so familiar with. The UK infrastructure bank links, you may recall, right when we started looking at this at the beginning of our conversations about devolution, there was a discussion about how can we get more funding into assisting us with tackling climate change. And so Wayne has been meeting with the UK Infrastructure Bank, and again, he is in the process of agreeing some indicative terms for investment. So that's something that I think we'll be able to pick up at a future meeting when there's a bit more information about it. But that is, you know, that once we get our work on the local area energy plan done, and we're then looking at how do we fund some of the things that we want to deliver across the region, UK Infrastructure Bank could be a key funding mechanism that we want to pursue. I think I've missed a slide out. Waste management pilot.
Right, yeah.
I realise that I've not covered that one. Apologies. Sorry. This is something that's it. Brilliant. So this is something that is, I think, quite dear to our hearts. How can we ensure that we work better together collectively? And we do have a waste management officer group, a joint waste management board, who do a lot of work on this. And it was something that we were really keen to put in the devolution deal, even though there's no funding for this strand, because there's quite a lot of changes coming forward, as you know, through the Environment Act, some easier to deliver than others, and some of which we may have some question marks over. But current ones that we are have been looking at are around the issue of collecting and disposing our POPs, which stands for persistent organic pollutants, within soft furnishings. So as I know you'd be aware, we're now having to collect those separately from other bulky waste. And of course, they then need to be disposed of in the right way, which does cause challenges with licensed sites for disposal in the county area. Also, more information coming out at the moment about the deposit return scheme for plastic bottles, which due to come in 2025, but that's got major implications around, you know, paying extra and then returning. And someone said to me, "Oh, well, it'll be just like in the 70s, when we had our bottles of pop and returned them." But I said, well, the thing is, in the 70s, from my recollection, as a small child, you didn't drink much pop. It was a treat. And whereas today, people are day in, day out, aren't they, with their plastic bottles? So, obviously the theory behind this to reduce use and everything is great, but the sort of added layer of return points is going to be very challenging for us over the next few months and years to think about. So I think there's a lot there for us to go at in working more collaboratively on waste management. Thanks, Noel. So we can just flick to the end now. This bit on powers really goes back to the document which, as you may recall, what powers are we asking for under the devolution deal? So these are listed out here. The item over the Environment Act and Local Air Quality Management Framework, we've all got individual duties here, but there's an opportunity for the combined authority to have a regional oversight. So we would still have our own individual duties, but in time it could be centralised if that's what we wanted. There is a bit there about the Energy Security Bill, which links to the Heat Network Zone Authority. The powers requested from the Electricity Act, that would enable us to directly connect to the grid. So this goes back to those points around local area energy plans and what do we want in the future for this area and what powers do we need working with our DNOs. And then the last one there was around EV charge point regulations. So again, enabling us to have greater consistency in that area of development. And I think that's the end then. Thank you.
There's a bit to go out there, isn't there? Okay, exciting opportunities though to work on with lots and lots of time and resource to do so. First thing I would say is I know there's been some concerns flagged through the kind of working groups on this about the release of the funding from government. So I've spoken to ministers about that in recent weeks, and for politicians in the room, I suppose they have been very clear that although I think most of it is now done, there's one bit that might tip over into the next financial year, but they're very happy to be flexible about delivery and not particularly concerned about it tipping over into the next financial year. So we don't need to worry about that too much. Are there any questions from colleagues either in the room or on the screen, comments or any such things? James?
Is that me on around now? Yeah, cool. On the local area energy plan, I worked for Northern Power Grid to help on their ED2 planning, which was 23 to 28. And I think it's really that they have an obligation themselves as DNOs and GDNs to contribute to this process. So I don't know how much work's been done with Western Power, Cadent and others, but they should be contributing to this. It shouldn't just be for local authorities to pay out to get a private organisation to come in and do the work for us. So I don't know what engagement has been done with them already. That was the first thing. Second thing more was for you, Ben. Yesterday at the Trent Valley Internal Drainage Board, they've put up their charges by 35% through to local authorities. They are being really stung by electricity costs because, as you can imagine, we've had a wet winter so far, and they are paying for pumps to be going 24 hours a day. I think there has been some discussion at the DEFRA type level, but not enough. And it does worry me. Internal drainage boards have got a really important part to play in flood alleviation, but they are really up against it in terms of funding. So if there's anything that can be done to get that onto relevant ministers' attention, they do need extra support. So that's just a separate one. And then on the flood alleviation, my understanding of engaging with the Environment Agency is that they need, a lot of this is going to need to come through actually how we regenerate our town centres, and doing that very smartly so that we can also get the net gain. Certainly in Works Up in Retford, we found that we can never hit the business case that the Environment Agency is planning for. So kind of recognising that flood alleviation is probably going to have to be looked at also in the context of town centre or city centre, wherever it is, regeneration, to meet some of those stringent business cases, I think is going to be really important moving forwards. Because certainly in Worksop we're struggling to get anything, and the Environment Agency wants to help, but we simply cannot get to the level that's required. So yeah, I think all great ideas, but that flood alleviation piece in particular needs really thinking through to actually get the money that's going to be required.
Thanks, James. I'll take away that national point and feed that in. On the, I was going to flag a similar point, so I may as well do it at the same time. Kath, around the flood alleviation work, obviously the Mansfield example and Severn Trent, which particularly relates to town centre drainage, and just wondered what conversations we've had with them about, because part of that was a pilot about taking forward best practice and being able to expand it.
Okay, so if I just the point about engagement with Western Power Distribution and KDEN, absolutely agree with that, and I know that Midlands Net Zero Hub are very keen to ensure that they are well, they need to be engaged in the process, but equally, yeah, contribute financially as well, as possible, as far as possible. I also understand, I'm not sure how far it's got yet, but there's been quite a lot of representations made to government about internal drainage boards being able to precept separately to district councils, because obviously at the moment it affects the district council ability to what affects our council tax setting. So there's been a lot of work done by district councils network, and at a event I was at a couple of weeks ago, which was an LGA finance event, it was raised, and the Minister Lee Rowley did take note of that. So hopefully that is more on the radar, so that that can assist them with funding. The links to the town centre regeneration, absolutely agree with that, and I will take that one back. I can't give you a more detailed answer at the moment, but I know Mansfield may be able to contribute, but that was certainly the point previously that Mayor Andy was raising around the work that Mansfield have done and making sure that that links into the future work as it's put together.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. That the pilot is bloody expensive as well, so we'll have to see what we can take away from all of that. Did you want to come in on that point, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that Severn Trent, although it's a fantastic investment into our area, I believe there must be a business plan that shows that it leads to a saving in the long run. And so it will be interesting to see, have discussions with them to see that kind of business plan